What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I got a topic that I want to talk about. There have been a bunch of reports on this topic. I've discussed it a little bit, but I want to get a little bit more in depth. And so what is that? Well, it's in regard to the draft. The upcoming draft, which is supposed to be scheduled for the end of April. In fact, the 23rd to the 25th, that weekend. I believe it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, so, but it's also regarding the whole coronavirus pandemic that has, stricken this country and the world. So, as we know, obviously, we've already talked about how the doctors are no longer doing physicals for players. OTAs have been pushed back indefinitely. Obviously, there are no visits from players to team facilities. No representatives from teams can go to the schools, etc., 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 right? Schools all across the country are shut down, so on and so forth. Right? So obviously this whole thing is clearly having major impacts already. Well, and unfortunately, it would seem that with the path that we are currently going down, it seems as though this is going to be something that will realistically extend for a few months. And so certainly through the draft, I would expect, I'm no expert, but I would expect that, this will at least go on for the next couple months, if not longer. And so obviously there are implications to that. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a possibility, we don't know yet, but there is a substantial possibility that the 2020 season might not even get played because of this whole thing. Now, that would have to, that would mean that it would have to extend into probably at least training camp, if not the preseason, and that's still a ways away. But I mean, they've already pushed OTAs back, and the off-season conditioning program is going to be seriously inhibited because of all of this, which could spell, bad things for the upcoming season, etc., etc., especially if guys this entire time, I mean, I'm sure plenty of them are working out, especially if they have gyms at home or whatever. That's what I do. I have equipment at home, and so I work out at home, thankfully, but they're not going to be in football shape. And if they're not going to have OTAs or what have you, then it could be problematic for the season, right? And so there is a substantial possibility that the season doesn't actually even happen. Now, again, that's still a few months away before we would have any kind of definitive answer to that. But, and again, I am by no means an expert. I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I do follow politics closely. I'm, up on the news with all of this stuff, and I consider myself to be a rational and logical human being, and so I feel as if, it could go longer than the couple months that's expected. And so, but the draft is only a month away. It's the 24th as of right now. The draft is supposed to be on the 23rd of April, which is less than a month away now, just under a month away. But the big news is, and this shouldn't really be surprising to anybody if you understand how not just the NFL, but business, particularly in this country, but certainly across the world, operates. And so here we go. Like I said, there are tons of reports on this, but this one in particular is on ESPN. I got it from ESPN. And the NFL wants the April draft to go on as scheduled despite GM's recommendation. The NFL plans to stick with its original April 23rd to 25th schedule for this year's draft, despite a recommendation from the league's general manager subcommittee to Commissioner Roger Goodell on Tuesday that it be moved back due to the COVID-19 pandemic, league sources said. General managers are concerned that in this current environment, with off-season activities and some teams' facilities closed, there won't be enough time for player physicals, gathering psychological testing, getting further verified information about the players, and some teams having to conduct the draft from home. The GM subcommittee voted 6-1 to approve the recommendation, the sources said. And if they don't think that there's enough time to be able to do all of that, obviously the draft is a major thing that needs to happen prior to the season, right? And then you got to get those guys in for rookie orientation, etc., rookie mini camp, and then veteran mini camp, blah, 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 blah. And then eventually into the, into training camp, and then the preseason, etc. If these GMs don't think there's going to be enough time to get that in, that could spell pretty disastrous things for whether or not the 2020 NFL season is going to be even played out. And so we'll get to that in a little bit. Let's get through the rest of this, though, and see what else they have to say. League sources have said it would be a competitive disadvantage to have some teams in their training facilities during the draft, while teams in California, New Jersey, and other hard-hit areas would be in lockdown and unable to be in their team's buildings. The league still has time to make further and final decisions, but the consensus among owners and the league office is for the draft to go on as scheduled. So let's note the divide here. Okay, now the GMs are still generally part of the power structure, etc., but they're not the billionaire owners, and certainly don't make nearly as much as the NFL does. Right? The NFL, the corporate NFL entity, and the owners are all billionaires, right? So they are lumped into a category together, right? Because they are the corporate financial, big money interest kind of loving motherfuckers, right? And so that's all they care about. And now the GMs generally obviously play along with them the entire time, but it's fascinating to see that the GMs 6-1 almost unanimously voted to put this, it's a recommendation, so who knows what the fuck that means, but to put this recommendation in, that says a lot. I think that says a lot. It's pretty fascinating to me. So let's continue on. There are differing accounts of the way the vote went Tuesday. Some sources say it was unanimous and others say it was 6-1. Either way, whether it was unanimous or 6-1, that's 6-1 or 7-0. Either way, that's a overwhelmingly in favor of pushing it back. Either way, the general managers strongly favor pushing it back. I think a lot of owners aren't sold on keeping it on schedule, one league source said. Of course, the power owners are calling the shots. Plus, add to the fact that April is going to be the toughest month with this virus. It's really a poor look. Yeah, and that's the thing too. I don't think we're even close to seeing the peak of this thing in this country, and so I think that next month is going to be a lot worse than this month, and the month after that might be worse than April, and the month after that might be worse, and it might go on like that for the next few months at the rate we're going, considering the fact that there are still many states, most notably red states, Republican states, that are not taking this seriously, and you have the jackass in chief that is urging people to go back to work because he doesn't want his precious stock market to crash, and because all of these shithead fucking senators and elected officials that care more about their stock portfolios, some of which decided to sell off a bunch of their stock right before this whole thing happened, after getting news about how bad it was going to be. All they give a shit about is their money, right? And so similarly to that, these NFL owners and the NFL itself as a corporate entity, all they care about is their bottom line. And man, would they hate to have to cancel the draft? And I get it. I do get it. I get it from the fan perspective. It would suck for us, right? Like we're all, anxiously awaiting this, especially as Dolphins fans, to see what the Dolphins are going to do in the draft. Especially with the videos of Tua, fucking looking all healthy and shit, continuing along the narrative of everything's ahead of schedule and, then furthering the drama of what's going to happen, et cetera, et cetera. And for sure, I understand that they want, the revenue that's going to come along with that, especially because if people are home, well, everybody's going to fucking watch that shit. Every fucking football fan's going to be watching that because we don't got fucking shit else to do, right? So, I certainly, like I said, I get it from that aspect, but obviously, this is another one of those classic examples of the people in power only giving a fuck about, their power and their money, etc., etc. And I mean, this is a major deal. Now, having said that, I mentioned in, one or two of my other videos that they could do just, some cheesy little, I don't know, whatever, right? It probably would take some intense coordination, but they could probably do some cheesy little thing where, Roger Goodell announces all the picks from his bunker in his house, right? Quarantined in his house. He'll do a live stream, right? Fucking on YouTube or something. I don't know. Not really. They would do it, over, television, but and on various platforms, probably every platform, every news platform and sports platform that would be relevant, and then the players, at least in the first round, could then, Skype in or whatever to like be like, and fucking give their moments and talk about how fucking psyched they are to go to whatever team that might not actually even end up playing because the season gets canceled. Like, but dude, like seriously, it's a legit thing. The fucking NBA season got canceled, right? The, MLB, like the fucking NHL, right? They actually shut down the whole fucking thing. Not just like a couple games, like the season. And that is potential for this upcoming season for the NFL as well, unfortunately. So, now that we've discussed all of that news and the intense relevance of it, or let's get to the intense relevance of it as far as the Dolphins are concerned. So, as we've seen, now, if the draft gets canceled, then, we may not... at the end of the day, real quick, before I get into that, at the end of the day, I don't think it will end up getting canceled, and I think that they will find some way to adhere to the social distancing guidelines and still be able to put it on digitally. I mean, in this digital age, they can find a way to make it work, right? So I would venture to guess that they'll, and especially with as much as they want the revenue and, with people going to be home, they'll be available to watch it. They could probably give, discounts on the fucking subscriptions and still make a fucking ton of money, right? So, with all of that, I would venture to guess that it's still going to happen. But if it didn't, then, we would never really get to see what the Dolphins are planning to do. But, I certainly expect that if the draft does go on, they are going to package a series of picks together to move up to at least the number 3 spot. Although, I am getting more and more convinced that they are actually aiming for that number 1 spot. Which would take significant amount of draft capital. But if they do end up trading up to go chase a quarterback, and then with all of the fucking signings that they did this offseason and the mass amounts of money that they spent and cap space that they blew through, I mean, if there's no 2020 season because of this whole thing, my God, I mean, that is just, there have already been, a number of things that have muddied the waters, for the Dolphins' current situation, right? Like, the Tua injury, man, that threw a bunch of question marks because up until then, he was the presumptive, pick for the Dolphins, right? Whether it was going to be that he fell to 5 or that we moved up to get him. We were going to go get Tua. He was going to be our guy. Then that happened, and then there was question marks, right? So there's always potential for wrenches in the cogs. And that's, again, to reiterate, one of my biggest problems with this whole plan and philosophy, right? But if there's no 2020 season because of this, oh my God, that would just be like one of the most majorly because then that's 1 year through their contracts, but they've front loaded all of these guys' contracts with tons and tons of guaranteed money. So these guys are going to get paid. They're going to get paid and they won't even have to play. They won't play. I mean, sure, they won't get, the incentives that come along with it, right? Some of these players, I mean, certainly all of them will have various incentives within their contracts, for sacks or interceptions or, what have you. But a good portion of, substantial chunks, the majority of, almost all of these guys' contracts that they signed are front loaded. So they'll get paid the majority of that money without even having to play at all, if that's what, ends up happening, which would be just devastating. And then they would all be 1 year older. Sure, they wouldn't have taken the beating over the course of the season, but they're all going to be 1 year older at that point. And they're all already either in the middle or back end of their prime. So, I mean, it's just, let's just, as fans, let's brace for the very real possibility that this is going to substantially hamper this upcoming season in some pretty significant ways. So brace for impact and let's see what happens. Alright guys, that's what I got for you. I'm going to get it out of here. I hope you guys enjoy my videos and perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.